you remember when an Impala SS sat in every other driveway on the block? In 1965, Chevrolet built the best-selling American car of all time, and the Super Sport was its crown jewel. Today we're exploring 25 weird facts about the 1965 Chevrolet Impala SS that even the guys who owned one probably never knew. Let's start with the six-cylinder Super Sport. That's right, you could walk into a Chevrolet dealer in 1965, order a genuine Impala SS with bucket seats, console, and all the badges, and drive home with a 230 cubic inch straight six under the hood, making all of 140 horsepower. The Super Sport was a trim level, not a performance guarantee, and Chevrolet was happy to sell you the look without the muscle. Thousands of buyers did exactly that, usually to save a few dollars or squeeze out better gas mileage on the commute. Imagine pulling up to a stoplight in a car wearing the same badges as a 425 horsepower monster, then wheezing away when the light turned green. Today, those six-cylinder Super Sports are oddball collector pieces, rare survivors of an era when image and engine didn't have to match. Back then, nobody thought twice about it. The badge sold the dream, and the dream came in every flavor. The million-car year. Here's a record that has never been broken, and probably never will be. In the 1965 model year, Chevrolet sold 1,046,514 full-size Impalas. That's over 1 million copies of a single model in a single year, something no American car had ever done before and none has done since. To put that in perspective, Chevrolet was building nearly 2,900 Impalas every single day. One nameplate outsold entire car companies. Ford's whole Galaxy line couldn't touch it, and imports were barely a rounding error. The Impala alone accounted for a huge slice of everything General Motors built that year, and GM was then the largest corporation on Earth. Of that million plus, 243,114 were Super Sports, which means the SS by itself outsold most complete model lines from other manufacturers. Think about that. A sporty trim package outselling entire brands. It was the high-water mark of the American full-size car, and 1965 was the year the tide came in. The X-frame finally died. Underneath all that beautiful new sheet metal, 1965 brought a change most buyers never saw but every passenger benefited from. Chevrolet finally retired the controversial X-frame it had used on full-size cars since 1958. The X-frame had no side rails running along the rocker panels, which made critics nervous about what would happen in a side impact, and lawsuits over the design had already made headlines. For 1965, Chevrolet switched to a full perimeter frame with rails wrapping around the passenger compartment, the same basic idea that underpinned American body-on-frame cars for decades afterward. The new frame also allowed a lower floor, wider interior, and better ride. Most folks in the showroom were staring at the swoopy new styling and never asked what was underneath. But that hidden skeleton was arguably the most important change on the whole car, and it quietly made the 1965 Impala one of the safer full-size cars of its day. The last gasp of the 409. She's real fine, my 409. The Beach Boys made that engine famous in 1962, but here's what most people forget. The legendary 409 was still on the order sheet when the 1965 Impala launched, offered in 340 and 400 horsepower versions. Then, partway through the model year, Chevrolet quietly killed it. The 409 was an old-school design with roots in a truck engine, and its replacement was waiting in the wings. Because it was dropped mid-year, only around 2,800 of the 1965 Impalas got a 409, making them some of the rarest of the breed. Most buyers never even knew the changeover happened. One month the 409 was on the option list, the next month it was gone, and the song kept playing on the radio for an engine you could no longer buy. If you find a genuine 409-powered 1965 Impala SS today, you're looking at a unicorn, the final chapter of one of the most famous engines in rock and roll history. The mystery motor goes public. The engine that killed the 409 arrived in February 1965, and it had a secret past. The new 396 cubic inch turbojet big block was a civilian version of Chevrolet's so-called mystery motor, the experimental 427 that showed up unannounced at the Daytona 500 in 1963 and stunned the racing world with its speed. Engineers nicknamed its unusual valve layout the porcupine head because the valve stems poked out at odd angles like quills. In the Impala SS, the 396 came in a 325 horsepower version for the street and a wild 425 horsepower L78 version for people who didn't care about their rear tires. This was the birth of the Mark IV big block family that would power Chevrolets into the 1990s, everything from Chevelle to Corvettes to pickup trucks. And it all went on sale to the public for the first time in the middle of the 1965 model year in this car. Evening Orchid, the one-year wonder. Would you believe one of the most collectible colors ever offered on a muscle-era Chevrolet was, well, lavender? For 1965 only, Chevrolet offered a shade called Evening Orchid, a silvery pinkish purple that shifted in the sunlight. It was aimed at buyers who wanted something elegant and different, and it lasted exactly one model year before vanishing from the color chart. Legend has it the color was inspired by GM styling boss Bill Mitchell's fondness for dramatic show car finishes. Most buyers played it safe with white, red, or black, so Evening Orchid cars were uncommon even when new. Today, an Impala SS in genuine Evening Orchid stops people cold at car shows, and collectors pay real premiums for documented original paint examples. It takes a certain confidence to order a 425 horsepower big block in what your neighbors would politely call pink. The few who did accidentally created some of the most sought-after Impalas ever built. The SS was its own model. Here's something that trips up even seasoned car guys. In 1965, the Impala Super Sport wasn't an option package you checked on the order form. It was a completely separate series in Chevrolet's lineup with its own body style numbers sold only as a two-door sport coupe or a convertible. That mattered because it means every true 1965 SS left the factory with bucket seats, a center console, and unique trim as standard equipment. It wasn't until 1968 that Chevrolet demoted the Super Sport back to a mere option package, and by 1969 the full-size SS was gone entirely. So the 1965 model sits right in the sweet spot, when SS meant a distinct car, not just a sticker and some badges. For collectors today, that distinction is everything because the body number on the trim tag tells the truth no matter how many badges a seller has glued on. The curved glass revolution. Run your hand along the side window of a 1965 Impala and you'll notice something buyers in the showroom found almost futuristic. The side glass curves. That sounds like nothing today, but 1965 was the year GM's full-size cars adopted curved side glass, and it changed everything about how the car looked and felt. Flat glass forced designers to build slab-sided cars with the windows sitting upright like a phone booth. Curved glass let the body tuck inward at the top, gave the 1965 Impala its graceful Coke bottle profile, and added precious shoulder room inside without making the car wider. Stylists had wanted it for years, but curved tempered glass was expensive to manufacture until the mid-60s. Once the Impala proved buyers loved the look, flat side glass was doomed across the industry. Did your family have one of these in the driveway? Tell us in the comments, and tell us what part of the country you grew up in. 4 drums and a prayer. Now here's the weird part nobody talks about at car shows. You could order your 1965 Impala SS with 425 horsepower, but you could not order it with front disc brakes at any price. Every single 1965 Impala stopped with 4-wheel drum brakes, the same basic technology from decades earlier, hauling down roughly 3,600 pounds of Detroit steel. Drums worked fine around town, but they faded fast when they got hot, and one good panic stop from highway speed could leave you with a soft pedal and a racing heart. Power assist was optional, and sintered metallic linings were available for the serious drivers, but discs wouldn't reach the full-size Chevrolet option list until 1967. Think about that. Chevrolet would happily sell you an engine that could push the car well past 120 miles per hour paired with brakes that were happiest below 60. Drivers simply learned the car's limits, left extra following distance, and pumped the pedal on long mountain grades like their fathers taught them. It was a different world, and everybody just accepted it. The Caprice was born inside this car. In February 1965, Chevrolet quietly slipped a new option onto the Impala order sheet, a roughly $200 luxury package for the 4-door hardtop called the Caprice Custom Sedan. It added a stiffer frame, thicker sound insulation, fancy cloth upholstery, simulated walnut trim, and special badges. Dealers could barely keep them in stock. Buyers, it turned out, were hungry for a Chevrolet that felt like a Cadillac, and the package was such a runaway hit that for 1966 the Caprice became its own model line sitting above the Impala. So the car that would eventually push the Impala aside and go on to become the classic American police car and taxi of the 1980s and 90s started life as nothing more than a checkbox on a 1965 Impala order form. The Impala, in a very real sense, gave birth to its own replacement. Nobody in that showroom had any idea. Engine turned glamour inside. Slide into a 1965 Impala SS, and the first thing that caught your eye was the sparkle. Chevrolet dressed the dash and the standard center console in engine-turned aluminum trim that swirled machined pattern borrowed straight from the instrument panels of vintage race cars and fighter planes. Combined with the standard all-vinyl bucket seats, it made a family-sized Chevrolet feel like a personal luxury machine. The console housed the shifter, and if you paid extra, a console gauge cluster, while an optional tachometer let you pretend you were at Daytona on the way to the grocery store. This was clever marketing genius. The SS interior cost Chevrolet little to produce, but it made a 20-foot-long family car feel like something special the moment the door shut. Plenty of buyers admitted they chose the SS for the interior alone. The badges outside got the neighbors' attention, but the sparkle inside is what closed the sale. The two-speed that ruled America. Here's a fact that sounds impossible to modern ears. The vast majority of 1965 Impalas, including a huge share of Super Sports, were sold with a two-speed automatic transmission. 2 forward gears, that's it. The Powerglide had been around since 1950, and by 1965 it was smooth, nearly indestructible, and dirt cheap for Chevrolet to build. It was also famously lazy, earning nicknames like the Slip and Slide. Floor the throttle from a stoplight, and the engine would moan through first gear seemingly forever before finally shifting once, and that was the whole show. Chevrolet's excellent 3-speed Turbo Hydra-Matic arrived that year on the big blocks, but the Powerglide soldiered on for the masses into the 1970s. Funny thing is, drag racers later fell in love with the Powerglide precisely because it was so simple and strong. The transmission everyone mocked at the dealership ended up winning championships at the Strip, and racers still build Powerglides for competition today, 60 years on. Hard to believe, right? The sticker price will hurt your feelings. Are you sitting down? A brand new 1965 Impala SS Sport Coupe with a V8 carried a base price of about $2,139. Even adjusted for inflation, that's somewhere around $27,000 to $28,000 in today's money for the flashiest full-size Chevrolet you could buy. A well-optioned SS with the 396 automatic, power steering, and a radio could still roll out the door under $3,600. The average American family income that year was around $6,900, so a working man could genuinely put the neighborhood's coolest car in his driveway on a normal paycheck. Compare that to what a documented 396 Super Sport convertible brings at auction today, often 6 figures for the best examples, and the math gets painful. The cars didn't get more expensive because they got better. They got more expensive because we finally realized what we had. Let that sink in. If these are bringing the memories flooding back, you are exactly who we make these for. Do us one small favor and subscribe so the next trip down memory lane finds you. That is all we ask. Now back to it, the Muncie 4-speed option. For the buyer who wanted the full experience, Chevrolet offered the legendary Muncie 4-speed manual, named for the Indiana plant that built it. For roughly $200 extra, you got a proper floor-shifted gearbox with a Hearst-style feel that turned the big Impala into a genuine driver's car. Row through the gears with a 396 up front, and the Impala SS could run with cars half its size. The weird part is how few people ordered it. The overwhelming majority of Super Sport buyers, the supposed performance crowd, took an automatic and never looked back. Column-shifted 3-speed manuals were the standard transmission, believe it or not, and plenty of thrifty buyers kept them. Today, the 4-speed cars are the holy grail. A numbers-matching 396 SS with a Muncie and a bench seat-free interior is exactly the combination collectors fight over at auction, precisely because so few original buyers checked that box in 1965. That beautiful Fastback roofline. The 1965 Impala Sport Coupe introduced a roofline that people still argue is the prettiest Chevrolet ever wore. The semi-fastback design swept back in one graceful arc from the windshield to the tail, with a huge curved rear window and slim pillars. It was pure jet-age styling, and it looked fast standing still. GM design chief Bill Mitchell Studios had been refining the look on show cars for years, and 1965 was when ordinary Americans could finally park it in their own garage. The design was so slippery that NASCAR teams took notice, and the big Chevrolets cut through the air better than their squared-off rivals. There was a price, though. That gorgeous rear glass turned the back seat into a greenhouse on sunny days. The Jet Smooth Ride secret. Chevrolet advertised the Impala's Jet Smooth Ride relentlessly, and there was real engineering behind the slogan. While Ford and Plymouth stuck with old-fashioned leaf springs out back, the big Chevrolet rode on coil springs at all four corners, located by a set of trailing arms. The result was a ride that genuinely floated over broken pavement in a way its rivals couldn't match, and it's a big reason the Impala owned the sales charts. The soft setup had its comedy moments. Load the trunk for vacation and the nose pointed at the sky. Take a corner with enthusiasm and the whole car leaned like a sailboat, tires howling in protest. But that wasn't the point. The point was gliding down Route 66 with the family aboard. Those spinner wheel covers. You knew a Super Sport was coming before you could read a single badge because the wheels gave it away. The 1965 SS wore distinctive full wheel covers with simulated tri-bar knockoff spinners, mimicking the racing wheels on Jaguars and Corvettes of the era. They flashed in the sun as the wheels turned, and to a teenager on a street corner in 1965, nothing looked cooler rolling down Main Street. The weird footnote is that spinner hubcaps were living on borrowed time. Safety advocates argued the protruding bars were a hazard to pedestrians and cyclists, and within a couple of years, federal pressure pushed spinners off American cars almost entirely. That makes the 1965 covers little chrome time capsules from the last days when style beat safety in every argument. Top-down big block up front. The rarest way to enjoy a 1965 Impala SS was with no roof at all. Chevrolet built the Super Sport as a convertible, and just over 27,000 buyers took them home that year, a small fraction of total SS production. The top was power-operated, folding away at the touch of a switch, and on a summer evening there was simply no better seat in America than behind the wheel of an SS ragtop with a big block burbling up front. Convertibles cost about $250 more than the coupe, real money at the time, and they came with real compromises, more noise, less security, and a back window made of plastic that yellowed and cracked with age. Named after an antelope at a car show. Ever wonder where the name came from? The Impala is an African antelope famous for leaping distances of 30 feet in a single bound, and Chevrolet borrowed the name for a sleek show car at the 1956 General Motors Motorama, a glamorous traveling exhibition where GM previewed dream machines to the public. The show car wowed the crowds, and when Chevrolet needed a name for its flashy new top-of-the-line model in 1958, Impala got the call. That's also why every Impala, including the 1965 SS, wears the little leaping antelope emblem somewhere on its body. It's a strange piece of trivia when you think about it. The most American car of the 1960s, the million seller from the Heartland, is named after an animal most of its buyers had only ever seen in National Geographic. Somehow, it fit perfectly. The car really did seem to leap past everything else on the road, an option list as long as your arm. Ordering a 1965 Impala SS was an adventure in itself because Chevrolet would sell you almost anything. 4-season air conditioning for around $364, a small fortune then, a tilt steering wheel, an AM/FM radio when FM was still exotic, power windows, power seats, power steering, power brakes, Positraction rear axles and a menu of gear ratios, a tachometer, a console gauge package, tinted glass, rear seat speakers, even an automatic headlight dimmer called Guide-matic that dipped your high beams for oncoming traffic. Two cars could sit side by side on the same showroom floor, one a stripped 6-cylinder and one loaded to the roof with over $1,000 between them. That's why no two survivors today are quite alike, and why collectors obsess over original build sheets and trim tags. Every 1965 Impala SS is a snapshot of exactly what one American wanted and could afford on one particular day. In an era before trim packages did the choosing for you, the order form was the real personality test. Built from coast to coast. There was no single hometown for the 1965 Impala. Chevrolet was building them at assembly plants scattered all across the continent, from Los Angeles to Tarrytown, New York, from Atlanta to Kansas City, plus Oshawa up in Canada, all running flat out to keep up with that million-car demand. Your neighbor's Impala might have come from a plant 2,000 miles from yours, built the same week to the same blueprints. The plant code was stamped right into the VIN, so owners today can tell exactly where their car was born. This sprawling network is part of why the Impala mattered so much beyond the driveway. Hundreds of thousands of Americans earned their living building this one car, from the assembly lines to the steel mills to the glass plants and the dealerships. When people say the full-size Chevy was the backbone of American industry in 1965, that's not nostalgia talking, that's arithmetic. The blackout tail panel trick. Chevrolet's designers pulled off a subtle trick on the back of the 1965 SS that most people registered without ever consciously noticing. While regular Impalas wore a bright silver rear trim panel between the taillights, the Super Sport got a blacked-out panel, which made the car look wider, lower, and meaner from behind. Combined with the trademark Impala taillights, 3 per side that year, wrapped into the crisp new rear styling and the Super Sport script badges, it meant the guy you just passed knew exactly what had passed him. This kind of detail is what made the SS package work. There were no stripes, no scoops, no loud graphics like the muscle cars that came later. The 1965 Impala SS whispered instead of shouted. The 425-horse unicorn. At the very top of the 1965 engine ladder sat the L78, the 396 turbojet tuned to acclaimed 425 horsepower with a solid lifter camshaft, high compression, and a 4-barrel carburetor big enough to inhale a small bird. It was essentially a race engine wearing street clothes, and it demanded premium fuel, patience at idle, and respect at full throttle. Only a few thousand full-size buyers ponied up for it since the option cost several $100s and most SS shoppers were after style, not war. That scarcity makes genuine L78 Impalas among the most prized full-size Chevrolets in existence, and it also created a cottage industry of fakes, which is why serious buyers today demand documentation before believing any badge. Be honest, did anyone in your neighborhood actually have one of the big engine cars? Or was it always a friend of a friend? Let us know down below what they're worth now. Here's the fact that stings the most. For decades, the 1965 Impala was so common that nobody saved them. They were $500 used cars in the 70s, demolition derby fodder in the 80s, and donor cars for the lowrider scene, which, to be fair, gave many of them a glorious second life. Millions were built, and the vast majority went to the crusher. Then collectors woke up. Today, a solid driver-quality 1965 SS runs well into the tens of thousands. Restored 396 cars command far more, and the rare combinations, big block convertibles, 4 speeds, documented L78s, have crossed auction blocks at 6-figure prices. The car your dad traded in for $400 in 1972 might now be worth more than the house you grew up in cost. It's the oldest story in the collector car world, and the 1965 Impala might be its single biggest example. 1 million were built, and now a clean one draws a crowd at every gas station it visits. Nobody misses the water until the well runs dry. The badge that faded away. And finally, the strangest fact of all is how quickly it ended. In 1965, the Impala SS was untouchable. 250,000 sold, its own model line, the undisputed king of the American road. Just 3 years later, Chevrolet demoted the Super Sport to an option package, and by 1969 the full-size SS was gone from the lineup entirely. What happened? The very muscle car revolution Chevrolet helped ignite. Younger buyers wanted smaller, lighter cars like the Chevelle SS and the new Camaro, and the big Impala's sporty image moved down the showroom floor to them. The Impala itself thrived for years as a family car, but its performance chapter closed almost as suddenly as it opened. That makes 1965 the perfect frozen moment, the biggest, boldest, best-selling year of a legend at the absolute top of its game, right before the world changed and never looked back. Next time, the topic is yours. Tell us down in the comments what you want us to bring back, and the comment with the most likes is the one we make. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss it.